Hello, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Creating a STEM Pathway for Underprepared Students. My name is Danny Shapiro, and I'm on the marketing team here at Hawks Learning. Our speaker today is Dr. Yelena Meadows of Potomac State College of West Virginia University. Dr. Meadows holds a PhD in mathematics education and a master's in pure and applied mathematics. She is an assistant professor of mathematics and has been teaching for the last 20 years. Her experience includes 14 years at the college level and 6 years at the high school level. In the last 3 years, Dr. Meadows has piloted and helped lead a full-scale implementation of the Corequisite model in college algebra and quantitative reasoning. She also teaches statistics and calculus courses. We are excited that Dr. Meadows is here with us today to share all of her experience and insight. If you have any questions, please enter those into the Q&A box located on the panel, either at the top or bottom of your screen, and we will address them at the end of the talk. And on that note, I will hand it over to our presenter.
Hello, everybody. I'm Yelena Meadows, and I'm excited to be here with you today. Thank you for taking time to share with me this 30 to 45 minutes of your busy time as you are winding down your semester. As Danny mentioned, our topic for the presentation today is creating a STEM pathway for underprepared students for achievement of college algebra credit. Today's presentation will be specifically tailored to the underprepared students. So when you listen into my presentation, I want you to picture the students that struggle with mathematics the most. The students who are capable of achieving, even though they're struggling with some of the attendance or other non-cognitive issues, are not the focus of this presentation. We're looking at the students who are definitely underprepared and come with some deficit from either their high school careers or after taking some time for family or other reasons and then coming back to college. So with that, let's go ahead and advance to our outline of the presentation. It will be structured on 4 main topics. The first one will be the background to just introduce what we see or what we saw prior to the implementation of this model in some numbers. And then the second phase will be how we envision the pathways to separate students who are not calculus or STEM goal-oriented and provide them a path that does not require the rigor of the college algebra that usually comes with it. And then second phase, that's when we started in our first year when we implemented the college algebra with support. So that's the Corequisite. And then lastly, this new phase is when we have strengthened our Quantitative Skills Course. And we have really been fortunate with the support of administration where we were pretty much given approval for anything that will improve the miserable numbers we've had. And we really went out there with our new vision of this course. And then at the end, I would love to hear your feedback and your questions, and we'll be glad to answer those. So prior to fall of 2017, we only had college algebra as our first gateway college algebra credit course that would be counted towards the fulfillment of degrees. And our cutoff score was 23 with ACT. Those students who did not have that, which was a lot, we separated based on their ACT. If they had more than 19 or above, they were placed in Math 93. That with passing would lead them to Math 126. And those who didn't have that would have to start in Math 91 and then progress to 93 and to 126. So the numbers, as you could imagine, were not very good. I will share them on the next slide. But the most importantly, we saw that for an underprepared student who is really weak in math, it was taking up to 2 years to fulfill that requirement, and many were given up. So these are the data for the year prior to the implementation. And so you see that the dark brown is the fall of 16 and the dark green is the spring of 17. And you see that the numbers are, they're pretty bad. So about 30% C or higher were passing the course and progressing to the next. You see the Math 126A and Math 126. The 126A was our pilot of having students meet for 5 days and see how that would affect their score. And so you see that the numbers are, pretty comparable, although with 126 they're a little bit better. The frightening statistics is at the top right there, that if somebody starts at 91 in Math 91, wanting to be a STEM major, by the time they get through 126, based on the numbers below, we see that only 4.5% of those originally entering 91 would make it through 126. And then, of course, something needed to be done. So we started phase 1 of creating pathways. So that was summer of 2017. We found that in our catalog, we already had a Math 122 course that was 2 credit hours. And it was a Quantitative Skills Course that pretty much outlined exactly what we wanted our STEM majors entering college algebra have. And so we didn't have to reinvent the course and go through the creation of a catalog entry. So once a student declares a STEM major and does not have a required ACT, they would start at 122 where there is no minimum to ACT. The 122 then leads to either applied college algebra, which is the 124, or the classic college algebra, which is the 126. So the business major or agricultural majors that would go to 124, and then they would take business calculus, which is 150. The engineers or health majors, they would go to 126, followed by 128, which is trigonometry, and moving on to calculus 1. So this idea shortened the progression or fulfillment of college algebra credit to 1 year if a student started at Math 122, or just 1 semester if they had the necessary ACT score with support. This is a pretty numbers-heavy chart. Please feel free to contact me if you wanted to see the numbers for the ACT requirements for each of the courses. As you see, Math 122 at the top has no requirements. So anybody who desires to study STEM sciences can start there. However, if they do have a ACT of 16 and they are in the pathway to either business or agriculture, they can go to 124 with a Corequisite, or with 21 they can go to the regular or what we call college prepared path. Similarly, we would require 19 ACT for Math 126 Corec and 23 for regular 126. So what we started in phase 1, phase 2 is the introduction of mastery-based student work. So that year we concentrated on college algebra alone. So in Hawks, each lesson is presented in a progression of 3 steps, and the recommended path of learning is the tile that is red, that's called Learn. And so it is an introduction of content with examples. Some of those examples are interactive, and so the students could try their hand at understanding those concepts and receive immediate feedback without being graded as they progress. It's very similar to having a PowerPoint that an instructor would go over in class. Then it follows by the blue tile, which is the practice. And practice and certify is somewhat similar. Practice has the same problem set as the certified, but it has support built in. We refer to it as a digital tutor. It just says, the button says tutor. The step-by-step help is available, and the student really gets to interact with that. What I particularly like about that is some of my students do not understand the terminology, and something that math instructors share for granted, just the words that mean the same meaning to us are not shared by our students. So that's a great way for the students to fill in the gaps if they have any in their terminology, and work a step-by-step problem. Another part that I like about this practice feature is that this is not multiple choice questions. They're fill-in. So the students are not asked to select the best possible answer. They're actually having to work from blank and give the answer. And during the practice, the feedback is given without any anxiety or fear of hurting their grade. So the feedback is given immediately, whether they got it correct or not, and then the solution is presented after 3 or 4 trials if the student just cannot get it. And then moving on to certify, which is gradable work. So the student will receive a grade that goes into the grade book. And I don't know if you can see it very well, but in my slide, you can see mastery of 83%. So this is instructor specific. You can set that to 70%, 80%, 90%, with whatever it is. So that means that if there are, let's say, 15 problems and I have required 83%, as long as students answers 83% of the 15 problems correctly, they have met the benchmark. So we have only 3 grades in Math 126 Correct or 126. Those are 100% for that particular assignment if the certified is completed on time. 80% in my classes, because I use 20% late penalty. Some instructors may choose to do a progressive late penalty to where a student cannot complete it at all if it's way late. I found that leaving it at 20% really helps students to come back when they decide to really apply themselves and catch up. And then 0 if a student does not reach the mastery benchmark, or if they haven't completed or attempted the assignment. We decided that we would allow unlimited number of attempts for the students to achieve that mastery. It is kind of a win-win situation. The students win because they get to keep their highest grade, and the instructors win because the students practice repeatedly until they get the mastery. So they, by way of that, they retain the content in a much better and more meaningful way. However, we do have a cycle. If a student cannot achieve certify after 2 tries, the certify locks down, and the student has to go to practice and complete practice in order to unlock certify again. So it does force the student to work harder, and it really places a responsibility in their lap. And a lot of students actually are polarized about it. Some really like it, and some really don't like it. So very few in the middle about that. So in order to be most successful, the math department has decided and was supported by administration to set a maximum of 40 students for the lecture. So that's the 3 hours a week. And then these 40 students would be self-select. They would self-select themselves into 2 labs of 20, at most 20. And that cohort would meet additional twice a week time with instructor and stay as a cohort throughout the semester. And we are seeing really nice things. Students make new friends, and they share stories about, oh, that, that lesson in 3.5 really was a tough one, and I spent like 5 hours on that, and then they swap stories about that, and they're able to work together and stay this way more motivated. And the beautiful part about that for us is that each student receives a unique set of problems, meaning it is the same objective, so it is no harder than the other student, but the numbers are randomly generated. So, possibility of cheating, of course, is always there, but it's very much minimized with this setup. So the course grade is commonly determined, and that was decided by the math department. You see the breakdown here. We kind of like to make sure that the final letter grade is assigned based on at least 2/3 of the grade being proctored. So in this case, it's 75%, so we're well within that. The lessons and attendance of 25% could be spent differently by each instructor. Some instructors like for the students to send them emails of their additional tests that they create for themselves. There's a feature in Hawks in preparation for the test, or some instructors put those practice tests up, and if a student achieves a certain benchmark, again, like an 80%, that they would give some bonus points. So that's nice to have some flexibility and see how that affects the grade for the student. And so here we are in spring of 19 with 3 semesters behind our belt, and so I'd like to talk about the interesting things that we've observed in our sections. So the very first section, we did not require labs in computer labs, and some instructors just wanted the students to interact with content on their computers. So they would require the students to bring their own laptops. And so we noticed that sections with computer labs outperform paper-based sections. It does make sense because, you know, if they're practicing in kind of controlled environment, they're getting facilitation and help from instructor, they're more likely to carry that with them home. Another result that we observed is that the student engagement as a time of task is tremendous. Nobody is surfing the internet, nobody's on there with computers during the instruction, did experience better student engagement. Also, if we measure student engagement as questions asked of instructors, it was of higher quality and higher in volume with students with the computers. So students were asking very pertinent to them questions. You know, they were faced with a problem and they would want to know the answer right there. I think that is everybody's educator's dream when students ask you about the content, and so we were very excited to see that happening. So in fall of 17, we actually allowed for the registration to be mixed cohorts, meaning that the 40 people could be combined, 20 that needed this lab, the support, and 20 people who are deemed college ready. And an interesting thing happened that we observed. We looked at our course outcome analysis, and that the people in the college ready cohort were adversely affected. And so we talked with instructors and kind of shared our observations, and we noticed that the I guess quicker, smarter kids would tune themselves out because they were familiar with the content, while the other kids were really asking the questions and interacting with content. And then they would just kind of overestimate their preparedness, and they did not do as well. So an adjustment was made for the following semester, and we now based our cohorts formation on their ability. So the college-ready students would not be mixed with the students who needed the remediation and support, and so they would only meet 3 times a week with instructor, forgive me, for 3 credit hours, so it could be Tuesday, Thursday class, so twice a week. So they would only meet for the lecture, and then they would do the homework, and, you know, but the same tests, the same quizzes. And then we stuck with a number of 40 for the Corequisite cohort. Now the 2 cohorts became the students who needed the remediation and needed some help. So the test and final exam prior in the fall were paper-based, and in spring we went on computer. So we would administer that in Hawks. And our spring semester students tend to be a little bit less prepared than the fall. So the numbers I will share in just a few minutes kind of do not reflect the palpable change that we as instructors observed, that the students who did try did really much better with the computer-based tests. And so we started requiring the students to bring laptop to any college algebra. And of course, that is an kind of touchy subject. What if a student does not have a laptop? So we were fortunate that the administration sponsored 7 laptops from math department that are shared by instructors. And I've never had more than 4 or 5 requested in a class. Usually students like to have their own technology with them. So in the last semester, in the fall of 18, we noticed that the students are starting to be able to work on content independently. So they're starting to really learn the ropes of different features in Hawks. I think partially may be attributed to the fact that we have received an offer from Hawks to sponsor a Hawks student ambassador who would come and talk to our courses and our students at the beginning of the semester and show what worked well for her. Lacey is a her, and she made an A in the previous semester, so we recommended her, and we were fortunate that she was selected to help us spread the word about different features that are helpful to students. And we again stuck with tests and final exams to be administered in Hawks. And we pretty much saw results duplicated and even slightly higher, better than the fall of 17. So as we are going to spring 19 right now, of course, the data is all preliminary, but just looking forward and putting a little hook out, in fall of 18, we also rolled out our phase 3, where we implemented a new model for Math 122. And right now we're seeing that the students who have successfully passed Math 122, they're working ahead and they're doing just as well or better than other students. And I will touch on that later. I'm very excited about this emerging trend. And still we're sticking with the test and the final exam to be administered in Hawks on computers. So here's our numbers. If you recall, Math 126, had a 53.3 and 46.2% in the year leading to the start phase 2, the implementation of our pathways. So our first fall, we had seen a tremendous improvement in our C or better grades, 70.6%. Now this is without the W's, so I would have to do a little more digging to see if the number of W's increased. I will warn you that the students complain a little bit more vocal because the amount of work and accountability definitely shifts to them for acquisition of their knowledge. So this is the part that I mentioned earlier, that our spring semesters, you tend to be a little bit weaker. But we still see an improvement from 46.2% to 53.6%, so that's great. And then this bright yellow column is our most recent semester, and that is the fall of 18, and we're still growing, so we're really excited about that. The co-requisite model, I am comparing to our Math 126A, and again, you see that the improvement definitely occurred. It is interesting that the rate at which the students succeed is pretty similar to the college-ready kids. It is lower, and it's probably expected that to be that way, but we are seeing still the improvement. And then the 124 only started last fall. This is a new pathway, and you see that the numbers are pretty good as well. So low 70s and low 64. Okay, so next we started, so that would be summer of 2018, just this past summer. Once we saw the numbers in college algebra and with support, we were really thinking, well, now it's time to revamp our Math 122, our entry-level math course. And so we started to think outside the box. So traditional paradigm, so I've been teaching for 20 years. Perhaps a lot of you can relate to that. We have a course calendar. Each day is outlined with content, expectations. So all of the formative and summative assessments are planned, mapped to a calendar. So we always would tell, okay, our test 1 is going to be Friday of week 4. So please be, make sure not to schedule your doctor's appointments, etc. And of course, the weighted average for the course grade is detailed and announced. So I looked into different learning learning theories, and there is one that's emerging right now, which is an adaptive paradigm that tailors to our new generation, where it says that if we outline the content breadth or the scope to let students know upfront, this is what it's going to take for you to master this course or complete this course, that is received a little better. And we're not tying it to the day, but we can, but just kind of outlining it up front. Next adjustment is that the assessments are now mapped to mastery markers, meaning that this is not a specific requirement to achieve a certain percentage on a test, but more so, what do you have to do in order to take a test? Are there any prerequisites? What are those benchmarkers for prerequisites? And the weighted average, of course, is outlined and detailed just like in the traditional paradigm. So I included just a snippet of one of my syllabus from last fall from one of my courses. And this is announced to the students that it is a minimal course pace. So I'm still doing the traditional course outline with week expectation and particular section assignments. However, I am upfront announcing to students that this is really just tentative. It is a suggestion that would keep you on track to make sure you have completed everything. So the next slide just challenged me, again, reading that new pedagogy about adaptive paradigm, to reimagine the formative and summative assessment. So we all know that the formative assessment is feedback on students' activities during which they acquire new knowledge. So with that, there are usually multiple attempts. If they make a mistake, it is brushed away and say, okay, so you learned that that doesn't work. What does work? And so the knowledge is improved and acquired. And usually if we do assign any grades, they are low stakes and we allow them to be improved over time. Well, the new paradigm challenges us to rethink summative assessment, which is feedback on student activities during which they demonstrate already acquired knowledge. And usually it is one attempt, and if they fail, they make mistakes, that usually is final. So high stakes grades like final exam or unit tests, and it's very difficult to overcome a negative impact. And so this paradigm challenged me in terms of thinking, what if a student had a bad day or a bad week leading to a test? The students who just didn't study was not my concern. I wasn't thinking about those who didn't, never came to class, but I was thinking about a student who truly struggles, has a lot on their plate in life, maybe other courses. How can we improve that? And the pedagogy suggests, so to reimagine summative assessment and make any assessment a formative assessment, because that is where the students acquire knowledge and they are, improving their understanding of content. So that was interesting to me, and I kind of took it and started thinking about how we can adjust to what happens with the at-risk students. So I organized, just 4 bullet points. I'm sure we can add more to that. But research-based truths say that most at-risk students do not respond to attendance points. If they don't want to show up, they just won't show up. So what do? So we need to rethink attendance as interaction with content. That's what we implemented. So the practice, certified progression, that would be what I would call attendance. And they, the students quickly learn that, you know, the best place for them to have their questions answered once they get to the problem set is me. You know, we do have Success Center and we do have tutors, but, you know, the most reasonable and expected place to get help is your class meeting time. So that started transforming how my classroom worked. Next bullet point is that most at-risk students do not get the wake-up call from low grades and try harder after receiving them. So what we read in research is that they have failed so many times it doesn't even hurt anymore. They're numb to those low grades, or they tend to say that, okay, well, I'm not good at math. That's just another confirmation. So that's why we allow multiple attempts for certify. You know, just keep trying. So I remind my students all the time, so you didn't get it this time, you will get it the next time. And so they find comfort in that. They can always go back to practice where they can get the help of the tutor, the digital tutor, or mine if they're in class. And they see that with, you know, minimal time investment of 20 to 40 minutes, they're able to complete the certify lesson. And that just really gets them excited to continue with that practice. Next bullet is that most at-risk students have non-cognitive challenges. Sometimes finance issues, the work schedules, childcare schedules, I mean, you name it. So the flexible schedules are what works the best at retaining or working with the students to navigate those non-cognitive issues. And I, you know, I will give Hawks kudos. They allow 21 days of free trial, so the students can register with the class on the very first day, and they have 3 weeks to figure out how they're going to pay for the product. And that really does make a big difference for many of them because, you know, they're registering for other classes. That's kind of the time of high bills coming their ways. And that alleviates that pressure just enough for them to navigate that successfully. And the biggest one that we see is that most at-risk students do not know how to study. So I will share a little anecdotal experience I had with one of my students. He's a great guy, and you know, just one of those students you really like to hang around and talk with. And after a test that he failed, he came to my office and he said, I really studied. I studied so much, so, you know, a lot. And then he said, like 30 minutes. And he was incredulous. Why was it that he failed that test? So studying a lot may mean different things to me and to your students. And certainly I found out that day that needs to be addressed. So allowing time in our model for practice with instructor. And so those questions would emerge that are pertinent to content acquisition. Very often the students who are so far behind don't even know what questions to ask. And having that time with practice and the content just really zeroes in on exactly the issue, and often it is quite an easy fix and they are able to move forward. So, and then once they learn about the tutor and the step-by-step help, a lot of them do become independent learners before they, you know, raise their hand to ask me. They will go there, and only after failure there, okay, they cannot still answer their question, then they will ask me. I really like that. And so the biggest part that I was trying to figure out how to implement is they never do for the students what they can do themselves in such a way that they still would succeed. So I mentioned earlier that the biggest obstacle is that the students do not know how to study for the test. So I had implemented a prerequisite for a cumulative test. I apologize, I used the abbreviation CT, cumulative test. is a mastery of a comprehensive module quiz with a 75%. I allow notes during that, 2 attempts, and best one counts. But this is the first time they're faced with more than 1 lesson at a time. So that sometimes means 7 lessons or 13. And they're learning to use their notes, or they're learning the value of keeping notes by having those available during the quiz time. I do not proctor these quizzes. I allow them to take them at home. And that teaches them how to study for the test. So I coach them to say, you know what, first time you try this, if you have to look up a lot of notes, probably close it and go ahead and study some more. But if you are feeling like you're not having to look up many notes at all, you are ready for the test. And, I am here to admit that a lot of students do not get the 75% on 2 attempts. And in which case I ask them to meet with me and review their attempts, and we discuss, what their misconceptions might be, where the problem is. And I give them an additional attempt, and usually by that time, the next day they come in with a 75 at least. So there is no set date for a test. They're not guaranteed that they even can take the test. They have to first learn how to study and achieve this, particular prerequisite of 75% in order to take the test. So the next one is the zone of proximal development. This one is interesting because, and of course we all know it is connecting new content to pre-existing knowledge. This one is a tough one in Math 122 because the students are on broad spectrum of unpreparedness. There are ones that just kind of rush and they need to slow down and learn the discipline of it, and there are some that they're just really far behind. So anticipate that their progress will be individual, and we do. With that, we keep our Math 122 enrollment per section to 20 because by week 9, you're answering questions anywhere from Module 1 to Module 4. And we thought of the student who maybe coming back from service in military forces, or a mom coming back to class, to school. And we've noticed that there are some students that are really slow, but they're producing excellent work. And so we have decided that if a student produces excellent progress on at least 3 of 5 modules, which comes up to about 63% of their overall content, we record a D for that semester, and then they just need to finish remaining at most 2 modules the next semester. If the students fail for whatever reason at all, we still allow them to carry their progress over to the next semester. We require at least a C- in order for them to enter to the college algebra next. So it does happen that some students still require those 2 semesters in order to get to the college algebra. Here's what it looks like in the syllabus order. Let me walk you through. Again, this is the adaptive paradigm. If you look on the left, if you create an opportunity to give credit to students' pre-existing knowledge, which is a diagnostic test feature in Hawks, they will take the diagnostic. So right here, I'm going to go to the red word start, and right underneath it says Chapter 2 Diagnostic. This is the beginning of each module. There is a diagnostic test, which is a key to unlock the lessons. So they have to take it. And we need to really, I make sure to really explain it to students that a 0 on that test is not going to hurt them. They'll just, discover that everything in this module is new to them, and everything that they will need to be studying. However, sometimes we do get students that know some of the material. So, this is a snippet of somebody who took Chapter 2 Diagnostic. Well, it was me actually. I made some errors on purpose, and so the ones that I answered wrong, the lessons that I would need to master and certify. Everything else already counted as certified. So our students really like it. Vast majority of them do get zeros and don't get any green lessons, but about 10 to 20% do, and they really like that feature. So then also allows individual pace or accelerated or protracted, and that all depends on where they are. So it's based on the proximal development. And the students can just see where they are at any given moment of interaction with content as opposed to calendar. As we speak in right now, I have
Dr. Meadows?
Yes.
Sorry, excuse me. I just want to jump in. I know we have a hard cutoff at 3:45, and I just wanted to give you a 5-minute warning.
Oh, thank you, Danny. Okay, I'm going to speed up a little bit. So let's go to the next slide. So the students know where they are in content, not calendar, and that's, the big distinction. Then when you go into the classroom and you have to tailor your presentation to where the students are, you can take an inside look. I can very quickly see where the students are. As you see, 9.5% are ahead of schedule. This is where I would like them to be. So 19 are on track and 48 are about a week behind, and some are more. So I can address them exactly and tailor to those needs. So these are the progressive weighted percentage for each of the cumulative tests. So the first cumulative test starts at 10, and the last one is 25%, which is the final pretty much. And again, any day is a test day. Students can choose to work ahead or stay behind as needed. These are our preliminary results as of today. So here's the fall 2017 numbers. This is the 4 modularized approach and 36.4 in spring. And this is our modularized approach. We did lose 1 content hour going from fall 2017-18 to fall 2018. So that's amazing. So again, this is without W's. And I had selected one of my sections for 126, classic college algebra, and one of the applied college algebra, and reached out to an instructor, and we had compared where the students who are coming from fall 2018 Math 122 are. And the numbers are really good. So in that particular instructor section, 87.5 are C or better. In my section, 56 are C or better. So they are performing at or better the level of their counterparts. Thank you so much for your attention to the presentation. I'm including my contact here on the slide, and I will take a few questions, Danny. I think we can stay for 5 minutes if we have any questions. Okay,
great, yeah. I know we had one question come in from Holly, and she was wondering, were the computer lab sections and the paper sections both given the 2-hour lab, or was the paper-based section only the 3-hour lecture?
They were both given the 2-hour lab. So they were working on the paper-based sections, working on labs that were created by the instructor and presented to them on paper.
And I was wondering what exactly your lab setups look like now that you're at computer-based. Is it all students working at their own pace, and there's an instructor in the classroom that's there to assist them if they have questions?
Yes, they are. So the majority prefer to work individually and on their own. I see in particular in college algebra this semester, there are groups of 3 or 4 students that tend to sit together and they just really have a good time. It's exciting to see that they're forming friendships around math content, all things. So, but mostly, yes, individual.
And Daniel's asking, what was the effect on your higher level courses? For example, do your calculus instructors feel that the students are coming in more prepared?
So this would be still to be seen because this would be the first semester where we would have Calculus 1, students coming from this new course sequence. I will tell you that students ask me if they can keep the Hawks product for life, and it is true, they can. And they're actually enjoying the product, how it helps them, so they want to keep it around. I know that trigonometry professor said that things are improving, definitely.
Thank you. And I had one other question about your labs. Is it the same instructor that's teaching the credit level course and the lab, or does that vary?
So we started with assigning different ones, and then we decided that that was a bad idea. So now it is the same as the lecture instructor.
Okay, okay. Well, I know we do have a cutoff, and I don't want to keep you too long because I know you have a class to get to, but we really appreciate the detailed presentation here today, and your contact information is there. The audience can always email us as well at marketing@hawkslearning.com, and if we do get any questions, we'll make sure to pass them on to Dr. Meadows and try to get you an answer back. So thank you again, Dr. Meadows. Thank you to our audience. We will be emailing out a link to view this on demand, and you can view our past webinars at blog.hawkslearning.com. I hope everyone has a great rest of their day.
Thank you, Danny. Bye-bye, everyone.